We're going to start out this presentation this morning by watching a short video from our sponsor for this presentation, and I'll turn it over.
Today's rental home is smarter than ever. Locks are smarter. Thermostats are smarter. Even touring an apartment home is smarter and more convenient. Introducing smart home technology from Rent Cafe, the leader in real estate marketing, leasing, and resident services. In today's age of assistance, renters value technology at home. Give them what they want, starting with a smart self-guided tour and then welcoming them to their smart apartment home on move-in day. For you, it's easy to manage as part of the Yardi Single Connected solution. For renters, it's a simple and seamless customer experience. It's time to make your homes a little smarter. It's time to make apartment life a little easier. It's time for Smart Home Technology by Rent Cafe.
What I'd like to do is, before we get this conversation going, I'd like to turn the time over to one of our two guests today, Katie Campbell, who's the VP of Technology Support at Landmark Properties, and allow her to tell her a little bit more about her role and about Landmark Properties.
Thanks, Brandon. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Like Brandon said, I work for Landmark Properties, which is a student housing builder, owner, manager, developer. We operate all of that under one umbrella company, Landmark Properties. We are up to about 79 properties now and with about 50,000 beds, so quite a large company. Actually, been the top developer in student housing for the last few years. This year, we just delivered 8 projects that we built either in-house or with a third-party GC, but all developed by Landmark Properties. So that's my company. What I do, I've been there for 15 years, and I handle all of our technology services, whether that's telecom contracts, smart home products, all of that under that technology realm.
Fantastic. And I neglected to introduce myself. My name is Brandon Savage. I'm the track leader for Multifam. I am not an expert in any of this, but I'm good at extracting good conversation with our guests, and I'm going to do our best to lead our discussions over today, tomorrow, and Thursday. I am an instructor at the K-State Business School and also work in a variety of other initiatives, and I'm honored to be here today. Now, I mentioned that Katie was one of our guests. Over the last year and a half, all of us have had to become a little bit more used to leveraging Zoom and being remote, and we had the opportunity to have another voice as part of our discussion today. But this individual is not here live, but was able to join via Zoom and do some pre-recorded bits for us. But it's going to feel like she's right here with us. So now, a virtual introduction from Chelsea Nealand. She's the Director of Research and Development at J. Turner Research, based in Atlanta, Georgia. And Chelsea, can you tell a little bit more about yourself to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Chelsea Nealand. I have been in multifamily for about 21 years now, and I'm with J. Turner Research. I'm the Director of Research and Development.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about Generation Z. And as with previous generations, they're already making themselves known to broader society. And to kickstart our conversation today, we're going to look at a few of the stereotypical attributes that are assigned to Gen Z for good and for bad. So as we look at Generation Z, kind of the definition age range we're looking at, these are individuals who were born between 1997 and 2012. So we've got age range from 9 to 24. Definitely globally focused, definitely have a broader view of everything that's happening and are concerned about things on a global perspective. They're very involved with social media, both in wanting to be influencers and also being influenced by influencers. As you'll hear today, and it's very relevant to our topic, they are very demanding, more demanding than generations in the past, and we can certainly debate as to whether or not it's justified, but I think we'll hear some good examples that can help understand why they feel that way, that their lives certainly have been different from the rest of us, and the amount of choice that they've been allowed to have in a lot of different areas in their life is certainly different. They're eager to stand out. They're not wallflowers. They are chasing experiences in their life, and some of the priorities that they have in how they spend their money is certainly different from generations in the past. And last of all, they are very socially conscious in both how they consume and how they expect companies that they purchase from to consume. So why do they matter to builders? In this slide, I give special thanks to BDX, pulled this together for us last minute, sent this over to me this morning, and the information on it was worth sharing because it really fits into what we're talking about. Gen Z's 40 million new home shoppers and growing. 1.5% Gen Zs in 2020 were home shoppers. 2% of the home shoppers in 2021 were Gen Zers. 20% of our Gen Zers have an average income of $92,000, are 24, with children, and are already homeowners. Another 60% have an average income of $28,000, some children, and are renters. And 88% of our Gen Zers are searching the suburbs, so they sound like a millennial in a lot of the ways that we've seen in the past. So with that kind of as a foundation, the first question I'm going to direct to Chelsea. And Chelsea, from your research at J. Turner, what sets Gen Z apart?
So some of what we found is that Gen Z is really wanting to assert their uniqueness. They really want to be taken seriously. They, of course, are native to the tech world. They have used technology. They're digital natives, right? They've been using it since they were born. They're the most diverse generation in history, which I think is really amazing. They are very independent, and they want their voices to be heard. So they want to be seen as independent, able to take care of themselves, and they want what they want and nothing else.
So I've got a follow-up question for Chelsea about what has J. Turner learned about purchasing preferences of Gen Z that would be useful for this audience here?
So when we asked about design upgrades and what Gen Z would want, we found some interesting things, and the number one preference for them was the larger balcony. So they wanted the ability to be outside more often, to have more outdoor space. And the other thing that I'd point out here that was fascinating is that this generation was willing to pay the most for that outdoor balcony, the larger balcony upgrade, and rated it the top. Other generations rated hardwood floors as their top preference and were willing to pay the most for hardwood floors. This was information that we gathered pre-pandemic, so I can only imagine post-COVID world, if we ever get there, that this will be influenced even more, and we will see an even larger push for this generation really wanting to have the ability to breathe fresh air, be outside, be with the elements, be in their environment. We're seeing a lot of design preferences from this generation that they're wanting peaceful environments and the ability to have somewhere to meditate or have some field to walk through, those sorts of things. So I think we'll continue to see an increase in those designs, and you'll also see the impact coming back with the willingness to pay additional rent if you're keeping that in mind and keeping those considerations in mind.
So as you look at some of the items on there, many of those things and that willingness to pay weren't focused on technology. They were just more on the traditional housing elements. And so now I'm going to turn to Katie and ask her, based on what you're seeing in student housing, what are some of the most noticeable things that sets Gen Z apart from previous generations, both without technology and within technology as well?
Sure. I agree with Chelsea, and I think a lot of what that survey shows is based on kind of expectations of Gen Z. And what we're seeing is, most of Gen Z has grown up during a strong economy with low unemployment. Their parents are highly educated. So they are, for the most part, and obviously this is all pre-COVID, so that can't take any of that into consideration for this answer, but we're seeing most of them have not had to have a part-time job before. Most of them are coming from a very comfortable childhood, and they're coming to college and they have those expectations built in with where they're going to live. So I think that shows in that survey that, yeah, they are paying more for these outdoor spaces because they expect all of those comforts to already be there. They're expecting the hardwood floors. They're expecting the tile, the nice finishes. That's what they're used to, and that's what they expect for where they're living. It's just very different from what we've seen over the last 10 years. I know when I first started in this industry, when we're building high-end, luxury apartments, it was nicer than where they lived. Their parents even would say, "This is nicer than your home. This is the nicest place you're ever going to live." We're not hearing that anymore. It's expected. This is what they're coming from, and they want it to be that way.
And then from a technology perspective, as they're coming in, what are they expecting to meet their needs for technology?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is like most everything else, it's very a la carte and plug and play and kind of on demand, right? So when they're moving in, it needs to be ready. It needs to have wiring in place. It needs to kind of, this is the password I need, and I'm set to go, and everything's there, and I can do everything from my phone. I don't have to talk to anyone. I can put in my maintenance tickets, pay my rent, and get online, all without having to schedule appointments or go and talk to anyone in person.
And what kind of array of devices are students bringing into their homes when they come for school?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so we're probably seeing an average of for every person, between 10 to 20 devices that they're going to be connecting to the internet, right? So you need to also keep that in mind when you're, again, previous years, you're thinking, okay, well, each person's probably going to have 5 things, and then we're kind of extrapolate from there. That's not the case, right? They're bringing their own, smart lighting. They're bringing their speakers. They're bringing we have people that are installing a whole, Ring system themselves, if it's not already provided. They've got that on their mind, so they're bringing in 10 to 20 devices right from the get-go. And you have to have that back support for that.
And take that type of environment, and then over the last year and a half, when, depending upon the school, some of them were just living and going to school out of their dorm room and attending classes remotely. I would imagine from an internet stress test perspective, there's no other locations that are using the internet as heavily as student housing during the pandemic. What are some of the things you learned with respect to internet?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you guys all will probably agree that that student environment, the stress they put on bandwidth is unlike anything you're seeing in a single family or even a regular multifamily, building or project. Their appetite is kind of the same, and it's constant, right? You don't really see ebbs and flows. You're going to see 5 to 7 is the high usage time. No, it's constant, and that usage time is going well into the morning hours. And we need to make sure that you can, with your provider, shift that quality of service. Who's got priority? We're putting more focus on, okay, well, the Zoom call needs to take a little bit more priority than Netflix. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you have digital classes, online classes, then those calls need to have preference, and any of those, that content, anything from the school, you need to be able to prioritize traffic.
So you and I talked about this earlier. How are you configuring the networks in order to meet their needs, having all these devices that obviously need to be able to talk to each other to install, but also having it so that students aren't turning on and off the lights in each other's rooms? So what have you found as the solution there?
Right. So what we are doing for Landmark Properties, pretty much across the board, we provide cable and internet for the students. And what we're seeing is, at least now with how we are able to structure the network, is each person needs to be, in their own bubble, and be able to have all their devices and what we call a personal area network for themselves, but that network is able to roam throughout the building. So they are. While, like Chelsea said, these kids are digital natives, they've never known a world without Wi-Fi, but they really don't know how it works. So they don't know that it requires power, and it needs to have, there's wiring somewhere, right? Wi-Fi doesn't just exist in the ether. Like, you have to have wires somewhere. But they want to be able to roam the building and the property and have that follow them and to their friends. So what we're seeing is you need to have the ability to have that personal area network so that their devices are theirs, and they can add and they can network between, you know, their PC and their printer or their Sonos and their Chromecast, and all these things need to work with each other. But again, like you said, Brandon, you don't want anybody else to be able to kind of infiltrate that bubble and cast stuff to your TV or control your lighting. So that's tricky, and even now more so. Apple has, which is great, they're, you know, doing private addressing. So a lot of times in years past, how you would, if you did provide internet, you would go through a registration portal and you'd register your device, and you would need to know that MAC address, that Wi-Fi address. Now Apple, it's great, but it's private, and that address changes, which makes it complicated for anybody who's trying to do authentication with that MAC address, because it doesn't stay the same. So now we're changing that over to you know, a pre-shared key, and you're still authenticating, but it's definitely changed the whole environment. And I'd say in the last 2 years, the whole structure. So you definitely want to have, if you're providing that, you want to have somebody that's in the know and up to date on what can be done and what can be provided.
So you mentioned that you provide internet and television. So I'm going to turn over to ask Chelsea, you know, what are some insights that they found at J. Turner regarding internet and television in student housing?
So, Brandon, this is one of my favorite studies that we have done. We actually did this for a student housing client. They were interested in whether or not they should continue to include their cable in their rent, or if they got rid of cable and allowed for faster internet connection or provided faster internet connection, how well would that be received? And I'm pretty excited to show you these results and then also tell you a bit about the comments. So, obviously, or at least to me, everyone said overwhelmingly, yes, get rid of cable and give us faster internet. We will still live here. And in fact, we would probably like you better. What was really funny to me was when we read the comments on this study, and the comments said that either they didn't know that they had cable, so they weren't even aware that this was some benefit that they had of living at this community. The other big interesting thing was that a lot of the comments suggested, give us a television. So we found out that less than 60% used a TV to actually watch shows. 40% used another device. So they were watching TV on a laptop or on their iPad. And they said, if you had included TV, then we would have actually known that there was cable and maybe we would watch it. The other fascinating thing was that the winner for which services they used for streaming was Hulu. And overwhelmingly, most of the students used Hulu to stream their version of cable. And the next winner was Netflix and Disney Plus. But really interesting stuff here, and can also show, you know, when we're asking these questions, that sometimes there is a generational divide between the people who maybe are making the decisions around, hey, cable's cool, or we still use cable, and the generation that is consuming saying, I don't even know what cable is. But really fascinating information here.
It's not baffling, but it's definitely surprising for me to see over not much more than a decade how that difference in, you know, where we used to watch TV at a certain time on a certain night, to this generation doesn't even have that concept. I watch what I want to watch, when I want to watch it, where I want to watch it, what device I want to watch it, and the concept of cable is definitely changing.
Definitely.
Any other thoughts you have on?
So Landmark has not pulled the plug on cable yet, and I'm not saying that we won't change our minds there in the next couple of years, but right now we're still investing in that because, and maybe this is a geographical thing or a student housing thing, at least for us, we're based out of Athens, Georgia, so University of Georgia, Georgia Bulldogs. In schools where I think sporting is a big factor in the content that people are consuming, you can't have any problems with your internet, and I say, going back to Chelsea saying about, oh, we would rather have faster internet, they still want faster internet. So you can't not do faster internet. You need to have that. But also, if you have your whole property all trying to stream ESPN or YouTube TV or whatever, that's a big, burden on your bandwidth in addition to all the other things that they have going on. So right there, that's not the only thing they're going to do. So at least for schools, in my mind, where sporting is a huge part of their day or their school, then we're still seeing that they are watching that at least for sports. And that's this survey question here. Obviously, you're kind of not getting a very good, clear answer because it's kind of, a lot of people watch it and a lot of people don't watch it. So it's kind of half and half. So we were like, well, half and half is not really enough to push us to cut the cord. So we're still in, and honestly, the cable is cheaper than more bandwidth. So to an extent.
I dropped off my second oldest daughter at college back in August, and I don't know if they even have cable in their rooms. They might or may not, but she doesn't have a TV. She's, anything she watches, she's watching on her laptop. And the first indication that she had a need for the cable or TV, as we would perceive it, was when that school played their first football game, and she's messaging me saying, how do I watch ESPN? Because I want to watch the game, and I'm having to give her our shared, ESPN login to watch it.
Yeah, so I should, clarify that Landmark Properties, we do provide TVs as part of our furniture package, so that kind of solves that.
Sure. So next question here.
So that just kind of ties back into what we're asking is, hey, you're watching cable, what are you watching? And it's sports, overwhelmingly, and then we still have a good number of people that are watching reality TV. The Bachelor is still, Bachelorette, all of those programs are still a very popular series that we're seeing a lot of people. There was a short amount of time where we used Dish and ABC had a little problem, and we heard about it. So that kind of shows you that they're still, so if we had a property that wasn't able to get over the air locals, we definitely felt that impact.
That's a fascinating number. You combine the sports and the reality together, how much that does cover. And so I think it's clear that cable is not dead. It's more that Gen Z doesn't recognize that that's cable. They just want to be able to watch it online.
Yes.
And if you can give it to me some other way outside of cable, I'm fine. And I do want it.
Right. Yeah, so that actually flows right perfectly because that is, going back to we didn't know it or give us a TV or we're consuming this in different ways. Can I get live TV, but stream it basically, but without it being off, burdening your bandwidth? And that is what I would recommend. And Dish actually offers that, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that, where you can offer that, and they have streaming blades where they're able to use that on, their laptop or iPad. And it's not consuming your bandwidth, you're not burdening that, it's on your network, and they're still watching cable.
Yep. We had a similar conference in Louisville a month and a half ago and had one of these with Dish representative. We talked a lot about their technology they have there, and it's certainly interesting that it bridges that divide of being able to bring, not their full range, but you can kind of select a certain number of channels, have those come in over the network, and as long as they're on that local network, they can access it from any device they have.
Yeah, highly recommended.
So in student housing, there are a lot of things done differently than normal housing. I would imagine increased video cameras are an example, more security than you probably would have at other multifam type environments. Do you see a difference in Gen Z's attitude towards privacy versus convenience?
Yeah, we do, definitely. And part of that is obviously that we're still seeing this, and and I think that survey at the beginning about these students being independent or Gen Z being independent, they're obviously still leaving their parents' household, so their security is important, right? And also, college students are college students, and they self-inflict damages. So from an owner's perspective, it kind of kill two birds with one stone, right? We're protecting, the students. We're able to see if there's any intruders or anyone that's not supposed to have access to a building. But also, you need to have the cameras because they're going to pull the fire alarm or break down a door or damage something. But what we're seeing is that while they highly value that security and they want to have access control and they want to have the cameras, they feel good about the security, they will give up their part of their privacy because they're so used to being on social media and sharing their lives with everyone all the time that they are fine with giving part of that up to benefit them for convenience, right? So we have a property that we're piloting facial recognition access control, and something that, if you ask me, no way, I'm not gonna log my face into any, who knows who's got access to that server and, those images. And, people, I think my age and older would probably be very, a little bit suspicious of that. They're, oh, absolutely, I mean, like, here you go, here's all my whole life. And just, so they can get in the building faster than pulling out their fob. So, we're seeing that, and that's, having the convenience, and I think we'll touch on that in a little bit, but they'll trade all of that privacy, and that's very different from security, right? So they expect that their information is secure, going back to what we talked about with the personal area network, that when they're online and when they're sharing their information, it's secure, but they don't mind so much about being on video or sharing their lives.
All right, moving to another topic. When I think of student housing with this generation, one of the things that they have become accustomed to having, that again is amazing how this has changed over the last decade, is if I want something, I can pull out my phone, I can click a button, and it will show up tomorrow in most places, and in some places it's showing up in 4 hours. I would imagine that when you have an entire community of young adults who think that way, that's introducing some pretty interesting challenges in terms of receiving packages for however many thousand students are in your housing. So tell us a little bit about what you're observing and how that's changed over the years when you look at a student housing mailroom.
Sure. And this is a constant change, even because you're designing a building in advance, right? So we haven't quite even reached the package room space that we need to have because it continues to grow. But if you are in student space, you probably already know that most of the UPS, FedEx, Amazon, they're not going to deliver packages directly to the front door of a student place. I'm not sure, they may do this in multifamily, they may not. I'm not exactly versed in how that.
But by show of hands, those of you that have multifam, how many are delivering right to the doorstep of multifam versus to a central? Okay, and then how many are delivering to a central location only? So that's definitely more than that one. Okay.
Yeah, so we're seeing for student, and this has been kind of a long time coming, about, like I say, the last 5 to 10 years, where Postal Service and any of the freight carriers, there's too many packages, too much mail. We don't want to handle it. Here you go. You guys have to sort it yourself. You have to deliver it yourself. And I'll let you show this first picture. This is a property we have in Gainesville. This was a few years ago. This is our office, right? It was, this building is 1,200 kids. And this was, this is how it looked until we were able to find a solution. And this, obviously, you can't operate a business out of a whole clubhouse that looks like, this is just one picture. This was how it looked everywhere. I was there for the move-in, and it's just, floor to ceiling, the whole common space is full of packages. And this is in move-in week. And this has gone on, from there. So like I said, this was a few years ago. So we were like, oh gosh, we didn't make that package room large enough. We didn't, and we were sorting it ourselves. Like, oh, we can handle that. We can have a student worker, just, they'll make a log, they'll call people, say that your package is here, and it's gonna be fine. And then it was like, almost like flipped a switch. And no, you cannot do that. It's not possible to have one, a student worker or your office control the flow of this. So what we've done is we've changed over to a package room system where we've set aside a whole room, and we've worked with a company. I'll show you this demo and then I'll explain a little more. All right, so yeah, this is actually a property that is located in Athens, Georgia, where our headquarters is, and so we've had that video, we've filmed that demo there. We've gone through a couple of iterations even from the package solution where, and you notice it mentioned locker, and that's one option, and that may work well for some sites. What we found, the lockers, we couldn't get enough lockers in a space, large enough lockers or enough lockers, it just was overflowing, so we're like, we need to be able to just have a whole room. So we've dedicated a room and it's just packages. And then there are several different companies that will handle your Luxor, Butterfly. I think there's a few of them that will handle the app and the notifications to the residents. And we've then now since had to add refrigerated storage for meal planning. People are having everything delivered, and that room needs to take that. And we've gone from that size room, now it's an even larger room, and we're working with Amazon to kind of even help us more with the pre-sorting, because you still have to have someone that logs those packages in, and they put them in the room, and then the system goes from there. But people are able to have after hours access to their packages, which if they're getting out of class late and they can't get that package, they don't want to wait till the next day. So that really takes a lot of that off of your staff, and you have it tied into your access control with that key code and your camera system. So we've had no problems with theft. The honor system has worked well, and they know they're on camera. So it's worked wonders for the whole system, and we've changed it. We've put it in every new build, since I think a couple of years ago. So
out of curiosity here in the audience, how many people are doing kind of the single room type of approach like that? Okay. So I think that's where you kind of bridge the divide, is that all of a sudden where I think I would have initially thought for myself, I want the locker, I want to make sure my package is secure till the moment that I get there, that this generation is willing to do that trade-off to say, hey, I'm fine with it being a big room as long as I know, there's a code for who's coming in, everyone who goes in is on camera, and I trust on the honor system to work, that if it gets taken, we know who took it and who had the code to get in there.
Right, exactly, and I think you'll probably find that you have more package theft in, just a regular city street off people's front porches than you do in a package room situation because of that. And it works really well for us.
What percentage are you seeing of refrigerated, and kind of what's the trajectory on the refrigerated
it's
goods?
Still not that high, but it is growing. It's definitely something. We went from, as you saw in the video, of, nice shelving. We need, lots of wooden shelves and nothing, flimsy and heavy things, and lots of space, lots of cubbies. And the refrigeration is something we've just started implementing. But it is definitely on the rise.
So right now, is it just like a refrigerator, and your thing's going to be inside the refrigerator?
Right, yeah. So we're working on improving that part of it, because there are a million of the mill systems now, so people are using that.
Okay, so turn the question over to Chelsea and ask her, Chelsea, what can you tell us about research that you have about package delivery in this Amazon Prime generation?
Yeah, so we thought, Brendan, that this was a very important question to be answered. We saw that overwhelmingly our multifamily apartment communities were really struggling with what to do about package delivery. And we wanted to know, were there different ideas or different solutions that were more appealing to the different generations? So I'm going to show you what we asked. We asked, with an increase in e-commerce shopping, would you pay an additional fee for? And I'm going to point out a few things here that I think are most interesting. The first is that overwhelmingly Gen Z said they were more willing than any other generation to pay for a solution. So they were willing to accept 24/7 smart lockers or smart lock enabled lockers, refrigerated lockers. But the really interesting tidbit here is that they were also the generation that was most willing to allow allow someone to come into their home for an in-unit home delivery. I think here that we're seeing they're a generation that has really shared things, been more open to living with more people, been more open to more communal type activities, and they are willing to allow home delivery. I don't know if it is because of the Amazon Prime phenomenon. I know now they can come in your garage or come in your front door and deliver, but I think that is something overall that you should take note of, is that they are the generation most willing to allow someone to come into their homes.
So that's kind of an extension of what we just talked about, and assuming you have the carriers that are willing to do that, it's saying instead of having the code to a shared room, give the delivery person a code to my room.
Sure.
And particularly if I've got some type of camera system inside, you mentioned Ring or others, that they would be open to having companies do that. Do you think there's an appetite from what you've seen from the delivery people to be able to do that? Because it seems like that's where there might be the rub right now.
That's the rub. We've worked with Amazon. They want to have access to that room after hours because their schedules are getting longer. So they're still kind of limited to delivering the packages before 6 p.m. or whatever time that office closes. But so that's where they are now, at least for student spaces. They want access to be able to deliver their packages at 8 or 9 p.m. or whatever time they're finishing their route. But yeah, we have not found any of the delivery drivers or companies to want to go back to being able to. I just don't think they don't have time.
Right. Interesting.
It may be something that that's probably an industry that will pop up as a service to provide. There are postal solutions that will sort your mail for you. So I'm sure this is going to pop up as an offering from the Luxor and other companies where they will hire out someone maybe to deliver packages. I could see that coming.
Okay.
We're not doing that yet, but if it comes, that
so potentially having the UPSs and the USPS and FedEx deliver and Amazon deliver to your one room, and then another service who's going to get it from there out to the individual units.
I could see that being something that pops up for sure.
All right.
Interesting.
As we look at the variety of technology, and for those of you that are the investors and the financial decision makers within the organization, we know that there is an expectation that it's nice to have all these bells and whistles, but there needs to be an ROI. There needs to be a reason for that. And so the first question I'll pose to Chelsea is, can you tell us a little bit about GenZ's preference towards smart home amenities that have potential ROI? And then we'll turn over to you.
Absolutely. We did a study called the Next Gen study in 2019, where we looked at what were the preferences for smart home amenities specifically among different generations. The big winner overall for all generations was a community app. And I'll show you the specifics that Gen Z actually had as well. So their first preference, again, was a community app. Now, when we say community app, we mean an app where they can pay rent, they can access communication with the on-site staff, they can alert someone to anything going wrong, hopefully get packages, all of that. They want to have all of their solutions in one place that's easy to access. Their second preference were Energy Star kitchen appliances. And then their third preference was a smart thermostat. So if you're looking at installing smart tech in your student communities or in your other rental communities, you could really look at the smart thermostats. And then their fourth preference was the keyless electronic entry for their front doors.
Okay, so now turning to you. You're in the field, you're doing it. Where have you seen specific concrete examples of ROI when it comes to rolling out the bells and whistles of technology?
So it's not direct, right? Because we still, even if you have a utility cap or however you structure your utilities with your renters, they're still, at the end of the day, paying for that electricity or that water. So you're not seeing that direct return on a smart thermostat, but indirectly, and in common areas, obviously, you're controlling, if you add that smart thermostat and you're controlling that and not allowing, maintenance or, residents to, up or lower that temperature in your common areas. So that's one area. But in the unit, indirectly, if you're installing the smart thermostat, if you also then have something on the back end that is giving you a management portal, which is something I would recommend, you have to kind of go one step further, right? So if you just install the thermostat, yeah, that's cool for the resident, but you're not really seeing the much benefit of that, except for that you can say, oh, we're lowering your bill, so you could pay more, but they don't really see that. But if you have something that's managing it on the back end and you can put in triggers, then you can see, oh, hey, there's a problem with this unit's AC, or this kid left for the winter break and they turned their heat off. I don't need this unit to freeze up if you're in a garden or a cottage type product. You're going to save a lot of money on the back end for those issues if you can get those triggers where your automated maintenance that, hey, this thermostat's been set to 70 for 3 days and it's still at 85. There's a problem. Or, like I said, the heat is off here. It's 50 degrees in this unit. Something's going to problem. There's going to be a problem with the pipes, or you're going to see some issue here. Best to kind of address that before you have to pay for flooded unit from your sprinklers or something.
And then on the internet side, particularly with all the work that you've had to do to create these personal area networks, what can be the potential ROI there? And this is something I know we didn't even talk about, but yeah. What is it? Just you have to have it? It's table stakes, or do you actually see some financial benefit to offering that flexibility for students?
Sure. Yeah. So what we've been doing is, we have what we call VIP or premium type unit, and that's kind of where we've put more than just a smart home, but it is an elevated package all around with the fixtures, with the larger TV, but then adding in the smart home. So I think that's the place for it. Right now, we haven't put it in every unit as part of the rent, but we're saying, hey, are you willing to pay more for this? And people are willing, but it can't be just that. I don't think just the smart thermostat is going to be the thing that makes people pay $20 more. But if you're putting that in along with the smart blinds and the lighting, and we've got this panel that you can control everything with, then that definitely is something that they're willing to add on for. They want to be in that premium level unit. And something we didn't talk about, another thing that I think there's a return, again, indirectly, water detection, leak detection, something that, at least with students, for the most part, you're not seeing a lot of maintenance tickets for, if there's a leaky toilet or any sort of issue like that. So if you don't know, if you're not doing regular inspections, you may not know about that for a while. So if you have these leak detectors and you can save, I couldn't tell you the amount of money it costs if you have an overflowing washing machine or whatever going down, 19 stories or something like that. That's would be a catastrophe. So something that you're getting, again, not a direct ROI because the tenant doesn't care. They're not paying more for that, but you're saving money on the back end for that.
Back to the internet devices and just enabling them to be able to have a personal area network. Are you to a point, I imagine you kind of went through some growth pains there. Are you to a point that as you kind of have that in place now that you're saving money in terms of service tickets, IT help, where they can come in and kind of everything just works? Or is that still kind of a future goal? Or do you see a lot of costs being spent, particularly during move-in week, of trying to get everyone connected correctly?
Sure, I will definitely say that we've, going from the authentication, the captive portal, going from that system to more of a pre-shared key. And what I mean by that is you still have an account, so you log in, you're given an account to the student, and then they log in, and they're given a pre-shared key, and they can create whatever they want that to be, and that could be, whatever password, and then they use that password for all of their devices. So they have an account, then they create a password, and then they use that password. That is much simpler than authenticating every device. People have trouble with that, and if, it was already, I'd say 10 to 20% of people had trouble following those instructions. Now we're seeing much less because, I know how to enter a password to the TV. That's normal for me because you're seeing that at home with whatever random password you might have set for your router or your parents created. That's normal. So now it's much easier, and we're seeing a lot fewer tickets for sure.
And maybe it's getting a little bit technical, but I'm curious and intrigued. So with that pre-shared key, all the devices that are using a single pre-shared key can then not interact with other devices that are using a different pre-shared key unless there's some way to be able to authenticate that, or if I want to be able to communicate with my friend's device, then I've got to have them log in using my pre-shared key.
Right, yeah, so there's probably definitely some instances where it could get kind of complicated if you do have any sort of, I don't know, a relationship or a friendship where you're kind of going back and forth, because we do have it provisioned where like a device cannot be on two VLANs at the same time, right? So you're kind of assigned yours, and that becomes your network, and then you're using your pre-shared key. So right now you can't jump between, because
and that's what you want.
Yeah,
from your perspective, that's what you want. And you said that kind of then follows wherever they're at within the complex, that they're on that virtual.
Right, and what we do for devices that are there at the beginning, you kind of have to have even another kind of a unit VLAN that's not tied to a person. That's where you would put any smart home devices that you're going to supply, maybe even the TV. That's there, and then that's kind of unit wide. And so you do have to have some, some gray areas, some barriers that do get clouded a bit. But for the most part, people are, kind of separating that, and you would have to delete your device. It would be complicated to go back and forth.
Okay, so this next slide, when we're talking about ROI, this was another late addition to the deck that came courtesy of BDX, and again, thanks to Melissa Mormon, who helped make this possible. But as Gen Zs are looking and searching for different areas, their research has certainly shown there are certain areas where they're trying to find. So some of these secondary, tertiary markets, more affordable markets is where Gen Z is gravitating to, which is no surprise given not only their growth within the internet, and then combine that with the last year and a half where work from home has become a lot more acceptable, that you can pretty much live anywhere and then still have the job that you want. Any comments? I know you're seeing this for the first time, so is there anything else that any insight you have into that?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, we're with student, we're really still on that tier 1 university track.
Okay, well, we've got a few minutes left, and before I wrap things up, I'll turn the time over to the audience. Do you have any specific questions you'd like to ask Katie, as someone who's managing how many units across the United States?
79. That is what I saw last.
79 units that are chock filled with Gen Z residents that would be insightful to you as you're working in your business and preparing for this generation to be in your units over the coming years in greater and greater percentages. And if you're raising your hand and I can't see you, then just speak up, because we've got bright lights up here. I can barely see you. Yes, please.
Are you getting grocery deliveries? And so, how are y'all handling those?
Yes, so we do have that. That goes.
Let me repeat the question. So the question was, are you getting grocery deliveries to be separated from kind of the prepackaged food deliveries?
Yeah, so that's even one thing that we didn't actually touch on. Beyond access control, we are seeing the need for, you've had the call box for, decades, right? The traditional door king, where you're buzzing the resident and they're letting you into the gate or whatever it is. But taking that one step further, now we have, there's video call boxes, and you can, allow access to the building either with a one-time use kind of text code before they get there, or they can still buzz you and allow access. And then we're seeing that they are still able to get to the unit using that, but it does obviously still have to filter through access control, and that's all still captured on camera. Anytime a guest person is entering the building, they're on that, they're capturing an image and they're on camera.
Great. Other questions? We've got a microphone out there as well now. She's going to bring a microphone over for you. They're on the fly here, anticipating our needs. Thank you, Anya.
You had said the Gen Z, they expect the info that they're providing you to be secure, which makes sense. But do you have a plan or some built-in program when that may not happen?
So as a rule, we keep that very separate. So we don't, Yardi is one of the sponsors, we don't touch any of their information directly, right? So all of that's going through property management software system. We're not capturing social security numbers. We're not doing paper applications. So we definitely, as a company, have obviously a data breach policy, and there's definitely procedures. But for the student side of it, that responsibility, is on that company who has a much higher threshold of security policies they're going to have to, keep than we do. We use Entrada for landmark properties, so everything is going through their system, and it never touches any person that works for Landmark. So a person is entering all their application info directly through that website, and it's immediately encrypted. We can't, there's like one person or a company that could unencrypt social security numbers if for some reason there was a need to do that, and that person's got, two-factor authentication, and it's a whole long list of protocols there. So that is one rule we've, from an employee standpoint, for all of that's in a third party, we don't control anything in-house or on-premise that has to do with personal information.
So in one sense, your answer is outsource it to someone who's an
Outsource
expert
it,
at it,
yeah.
or at least export some of outsource some of the risk.
Right. I outsource it, which of course, obviously, if something were to happen, they're going to look to you, but at least they're under a whole other set of rules and guidelines.
All right, so we were right at that time. That's going to wrap up our discussion this afternoon.